Hey gang, it's Platt, and today we're going to review a Mr. Beer partial mash brew kit. So let's go. Looking back, one of my more popular YouTube videos is titled How to Make a Mr. Beer Kit Better. What I did was I took a standard Mr. Beer kit like this and I added additional grains. Normally all you need to make a beer is one of these kits and that's it. But what I did was kind of took it to the next level. I took some additional grains and created basically a grain soup, which we then added the can of hopped malt extract to. What the additional grains did, or that grain soup we did, was it added more fermentable sugars, which boosted the ABV of the beer, gave the beer a little extra body, also just a little more complexity of flavor, and overall just improved the quality of the beer. What Mr. Beer has now, and has been doing for a little while, is they've created their own partial mash kits, kind of like what we did in that previous experiment. And if you want to see that video, I'll throw a link to it up here, and you can check that out. But what Mr. Beer, like I said, has now is like a prefab kit like that, where we're adding additional grains to it, again, ramping up a standard kit. In this particular kit, we're taking a generic Irish stout and we're going to turn it into an oatmeal stout. So let's get started brewing, and the first thing we're going to do is let's look and see what comes with this. Alright, so let's take a look and see what we get. First we get a can of the standard hop malt extract. This is a St. Patrick's Irish stout. If you just brew the beer that comes with this, if you just use this, the standard beer comes out to around I think it's 3.2, 3.4, somewhere in the mid threes alcohol by volume. As with every Mr. Beer kit, if you'll take the lid off, you will find a pack of yeast. This is a kind of standard all-purpose ale yeast that they use for their beers. This is probably also the first place if you want to ramp it up a little bit, do something a little different. You could use a stout yeast or a different, I have plenty of Saf Ale USO 5 yeast. Just you could tweak the yeast a little bit if you would like, but for our purposes we're going to use the yeast that comes with the kit. Next thing that comes in there, and it comes in all their kits, is their non-rinse sanitizer. Generally you'll use about half the packet to rinse out your fermenter and to sanitize your different tools, and then the other half you'll use later when you bottle. If you're new to homebrewing and not sure about sanitation, I will put a link up here to my video on sanitation. If you have any questions or concerns, you can learn a little bit there. Next, what we have is a pack of malt extract, soft pack of malt extract. Years ago when Mr. Beer first started, like I said, they would just sell the standardized kit. They realized people wanted more alcohol in their beer, they wanted to ramp things up a little bit. So this is one of the first things they did. Originally it was just a pack of basically extra sugar, I think it was corn solids or something like that, and that would bump up the ABV and also provide additional body. Now they have this soft pack of liquid malt extract, and this is going to help us boost up the ABV. Next, they give us a little bag for our different grains that we get, and this will just be a one-use bag, and then you toss it. Speaking of which, now we come to the specialty grains that come with it. First is 2-row malt, pale malt, 2-row, and even its sibling 6-row barley. They basically do the heavy lifting in brewing. Most recipes start with a base of this 2-row malt, and then we'll add additional other grains in various amounts to create these wonderful beer recipes. So we got our 2-row malt. Next we have our chocolate malt. If you want to know how beers get dark flavor, it's the addition of these different dark malts. There's coffee malts. This one's a chocolate malt, and you can tell by the color. It's like a dark chocolate, and with the addition of this, we're going to get darker colors, but also darker flavors, roastier flavors from this type of malt. And last but not least, because we're converting this Irish Stout into an oatmeal stout, we need some oats, so we got some flaked oats here. One thing I noticed when I was looking through the recipe of this, they give you 4 ounces of each one of these grains, but you only need for a couple of them 2 ounces. So just be careful not to just assume, well, what's the recipe, we'll just throw the whole thing in. So be sure to check out the instructions. The instructions, they didn't come with a sit in here, but you can find the instructions or the recipes for specific beers online at the Mr. Beer website, which is most likely where you find these kits. So that being said, let's brew a little bit of oatmeal stout. Okay, so we're ready to do our mash. Well, the first instruction was to take 6 cups of water. We're going to heat it up between 155 and 165 degrees. Then we're going to take our grains, put in our little sack. We ended up using 4 ounces of the oats and only 2 ounces of the chocolate malt and the 2-row malt, so we have a little left over. And what we're going to do is just take this bag and we're going to dunk it like a tea. We want to make sure you get all those grains completely soaked. We want to get as much of that goodness out there. We also don't want any lumps, dry spots, dough balls. So we're going to dunk this for a little bit. And we're going to reduce our heat down so we just maintain that temperature range of 155 to 65. And we're going to do this for we're going to let this sit for about 30 minutes. At the end of the 30 minutes, the instructions suggest that you take 1 cup of warm water and you'll hold the grains over here and rinse those grains out. To use a technical brewing term, it's called sparging. If we were doing an all-grain recipe or whatever, it was something you do there. But they suggest the extra cup of hot water just to kind of rinse all those grains out, get that last little bit of sugar out. And then we're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're going to add our hopped malt extract and then the extra pack of liquid malt extract. So let's let this sit for 30 minutes and then we'll come back and add our extracts. Okay, so it's been a little over 30 minutes. We let our grain seep for that 30 minutes, then we rinse the grain after we're done. We brought what is technically called our wort up to a boil, and now we're ready to add the extract. If you've never worked with one of these Mr. Beer kits before, I'll throw a link to a video up here where I show you how to use just the base Mr. Beer kit. And like I said, it's just hopped malt extract. The bird's excited about this beer. So what we got here is our base wort of that grain soup, and let's add first our hopped malt extract. One thing you noticed about that water is it's dark now. It looks like almost like a light coffee. I think it's that chocolate malt that made it dark. You want to leave this hot malt extract while you're doing the grains. Throw this in some hot water just so it makes it easier to pour out. There we go. Be careful, this stuff is thick and sticky. Also have you a convenient spoon around because you're going to need to get that last little bit out. And we're just going to add the rest of this in, and then I'm going to add the other packet of extract. Hopefully this time too you set up your fermenter with a gallon of cold water, and because when we get this all turned in, we're going to put it in the ferment. So let me finish up here with the extract, get everything in the fermenter, we'll throw in our yeast, and then we'll come back and wrap up. Alright, to wrap up, we took our Mr. Beer partial mash kit, which came with a can of hop malt extract that's labeled St. Patrick Irish Stout, and that extract itself, we could have just used that and made a regular Irish Stout. But they gave us additional grains, 2-row malt, 2-row pale malt, chocolate malt, and flaked oats, and we took those and did a mash, or created a grain soup's the best way I can describe it, and then added our extract and an additional can of additional pack of liquid malt extract, and we turned a regular Irish Stout into a Oatmeal Stout. We made roughly 2 gallons of it. We're going to let this sit in the primary fermenter for about 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, we're going to bottle. If you've never bottled before or have any questions, I'll throw a link up here. The bird's seen the video a ton of times about bottling beer, if you have any questions or concerns. When we bottle, we're going to leave the bottles at room temperature for another 3 weeks, and then we're going to do what's called conditioning. They also use a term called lagering, but we're going to take those bottles then and throw them in a refrigerator. I got a little beer fridge. We're going to let those sit for another 6 to 8 weeks to condition. So this beer will be ready in 2 to 3 months. I will come back with a video on that. I've got some maple mead working, some other things working, so I'll come back later and do a video just kind of recap. But if you're new to the brewing thing and maybe you've done, you know, a Cooper's kit, a Mr. Beer kit with just the extract, this is a next step up, next step to advancement. This will get you closer to eventually all grain brewing, which is what they do at your local commercial brewer. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a comment below. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comments section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. And according to the bird, it's beer time. Bottoms up.